And that's DJT, of course, with the bars and the restaurants packed outside of the place. You'd have thought they were watching the Yankees win when the Yankees have been losing. Welcome into Wake Up Mid-Missouri. With just 8 days to go, Stephanie, I know you're pumped. Producer Hannah's pumped. John Marsh is pumped. Everyone's pumped. Everybody out there is listening and pumped, too. Stephanie, what are you feeling? What's the vibe?
It's pretty good. I don't want to jinx us, but I'm feeling good.
I know. I think a lot of the thing, they talked yesterday. I heard a lot of commentators talking about how a campaign that's winning has fun. And that was fun last night. I mean, I watched some of it. I saw, listened to some of it. But they seem to be having fun. The speakers are having fun. They're on point. A lot of policy, but a lot of just good old-fashioned fun. And J.D. Vance, of course, taken to the big talking head shows. He's having a lot of fun with them, too, eating them alive.
Yeah, and I saw some firsthand accounts of some friends who were actually there, and they said, I've never seen anything like this.
The reporter, Alexis McAdams from Fox, was saying the energy was unbelievable. I mean, she was supposed to be reporting, but you got a sense she got wrapped up in it a little bit. I mean, she didn't say as much. But
well, there were a lot of people who were supposed to be reporting this morning that are doing, I think, something else. I know all I heard from some left-leaning journos this morning was about, oh my gosh, somebody told an off-color joke. And I didn't watch the whole thing. So, but they are really worked up about the jokes that other people told on the
apparently
stage.
A comedian 2 to 2.5 hours before the actual event started, one of the warm-up things, told some off-color jokes or some distasteful jokes about, I guess, Latinos or Puerto Ricans or something, And this morning, Carolyn Levitt, the national spokesperson, she was like, nope, we have nothing to do with that. It was an unvetted comment, unlike Kamala, where they try to protect and cloister John. And, they have these little awkward moments in the deli when she says, oh, look at the smoked salmon. I mean, unbelievable, I'll have a pastrami on rye, where I think she was in Philly. Oh, look at the smoked salmon. And then you got DJT out there putting an apron over his suit and tie, just being DJT, but doing every man's job and enjoying it and being natural about it.
I don't know, big takeaway, Donald J. Trump at Madison Square Garden certainly pulled no punches what he intends to do about illegal immigration.
Oh, no, mass deportation. And there was another thing that he said, and I thought, Producer Hannah, this speaks to, I think, a lot of people in the audience who may be caregiving. I see a lot of women in this role, in their 40s, 50s. They have elderly mom or dad who may be, independent but needing a lot of support. They have kids who are being, knuckleheads and doing what kids will do, and husbands, John, don't we know, being knucklehead husbands. And they're doing a lot of caregiving, but especially as it applies to the older folks, trying to take care of them, get them to their visits and everything. And here's what Trump said about that.
I will support a tax credit for family caregivers who take care of a parent or a loved one. It's about time that they were recognized, right?
And I think that was an interesting one. I don't know that that's so much as pandering, because I think that's something that is on the minds of a lot of people. Let's be honest, a lot of women end up doing that job, and they're still trying to do their other hats of being a mom and a husband, and a mom and a wife, and do the bake sale. And
But how do you enforce that? I mean, again, like with the no tax on tips, it's like suddenly everyone's going to be tipped because it creates weird incentives. So what qualifies as caregiving? And, I'd move my mom in the basement to get a tax break. I don't know what it is. And I think also, I think the thing that a lot of truly conservative folks wished from Trump was a little bit more distance between these tax breaks between him and Kamala, and also some plan as to how we stop the bleeding and stop the spending. And this is just another thing that's like, how are we going to pay for that?
I disagree with you on that one. That one, I think, is something where
I'm in the thick of it, so I feel you. Like, I'm right there, and it's conversations I have with friends daily.
But I think you could document a decrease in income that correlates with caregiving. If a woman, I think we should have one for if a woman stays home for 2 or 3 years and raises her children in those first pivotal years, especially. I think that there ought to be some recognition of that economically. I've said that for a long time.
But then what if she went to a state school and got state money to be like a scientist, and then she decides not to put that to use and stays home. I mean, there's so many different, I mean, people make choices for all sorts of different reasons. And I don't know, I think when the government gets involved and starts picking winners and losers, that we create some perverse incentives that we aren't going to like.
Well, I tell
Does
you,
it create a new bureaucracy, too, where you have to have in-house visits by, for lack of a better term, social services staff to vet what the
I don't think so.
caregivers do?
We got doctors that give Social Security disability determinations all the time.
Yeah.
So once an elderly individual was declared dementia or otherwise immobilized, or you could define criteria. We do that with workers' comp schedules. I mean, we already have that kind of a thing. And at that point, you could say then, okay, if a woman then goes from 40 hours to part-time and she's working an average of 20 hours a week, we come up with some kind of keeping it whole kind of a thing. I think we could do that. And at any rate, I think that's good. But so is this.
You're fired. Get out. Get out.
Yeah.
You're fired.
It was now. I don't know if you all knew this, but you know how they were talking about this being a neo-Nazi equivalent, right, from 1939. Did you know, John Marsh, that Elton John and Billy Joel and the New York Knicks and is it the Rangers or the Islanders that play? Do you know those are all Nazis? I mean, they film Madison Square Garden regularly. Oh, Frank Sinatra, one of my favorite. Remember the main event in Frank Sinatra and his followers?
Billy Joel,
Nazi. Boy, when I think of Madison Square Garden and Billy Joel, I think of Nazi. I mean, it was preposterous.
Yeah.
It was
if you're going to take on the role of, if you use a venue that someone else has been in and suddenly you're that person, then I think Trump's also like a preacher. I mean, how many churches has he been in? I mean, it just, if you're going to take that bad, then you've got to take it with the good as well. And I think but it was all over the mainstream media, and it just goes to show they're desperate.
So that was one of the big items of the weekend. Harris, how about Beyonce Gate? First of all, she was supposed to show up at an event, wasn't it, in Houston earlier?
Friday, I think.
Friday.
And they promoted the heck out of that.
But this has happened before, where she was supposed, wasn't it previously, she didn't even show up, I believe, at an event that they had speculated about. Now, this time, she was supposed to perform. She spoke for 2 or 3 minutes, and that was it. No performance.
Right.
So, I mean, if you've
there
got
were some people that were pretty mad. They showed, videos of people walking out.
I thought it was fantastic. Yeah, they walked out when they found out when that was it, when she wrapped up her speech. And then there was this from Friday. I don't know if you had a chance to watch it all, but I did.
You win, but you know what they did? They did something that's only done in third world countries. They came after their political opponent.
Yes.
I could have put Crooked Hillary in jail.
Well, not only that, but they're weaponizing it by saying that that's what you're going to do once you get in office.
Isn't it
by
great?
ignoring what they're doing right now. It's crazy.
I heard it. Somebody was defending me today. They said, no, they say that's what you're doing to him. They're going, he's going to put us in jail. He's going to invest.
That's what you're doing.
That's what you're doing to him.
Yeah.
A lot of people say, will you do that? Will you do that to him if you win? The presidency has tremendous power. I could have put Crooked Hillary
I
in
respected
jail.
that you didn't, because what you said was it would be bad for the country. The rebel.
I don't know. When I listened to the totality of that interview, which, by the way, CNN went out of their way to spend a lot of electricity and chip time, CNN politics, 32 false claims Trump made to Joe Rogan. Yeah, he misspoke sometimes. He said on immigration, Trump repeated that we had 13 million murderers dropped in our country over the last 3 years. What he meant to say was illegal immigrants, many of them murderers. Actually, that's been over several decades. We've had, a lot of crime from them. He said that he built 570 miles of wall. Official government data, which right there erodes CNN's political fact-checking integrity right then. I mean, official government data. Would that be the same data that, overestimates new jobs by 800,000? Would it be that government? Would it be that government that told us to mask up? Would it be that government that told us after it was plainly clear that kids were not the vectors of the spread and should have gotten back into school? Was it that government? Oh, that government that said that if you get the vaccine, you won't be infectious and you won't get COVID? I mean, really? That government said that the data only shows 458 miles were built under Trump. Well, when it comes to reporting, we've got the Zimmer News team, we've got Marsh, we've got Hauswirth, we got Murphy, we got Luzader. How you doing, Brian Hauswirth? Good to have you back.
It's good to be back. Good to see you. I appreciate you. I'll tell you, one thing I really encourage people to do and it's a race I know Stephanie's focused on, and you've talked about it as well. And no offense to the presidential race, the governor's race, they're all important. But every race is important. There is a race in Boone, in Callaway counties for circuit judge in Boone County to replace retiring Judge Kevin Crane. And I've been working on this story for a couple of weeks. I talked to both Jesus Osete, who is a former deputy attorney general. I also talked to Associate Circuit Judge Stephanie Morrill, who's running, and they both, if you look at, and I linked to their campaign websites, they both have some huge endorsements. I mean, this is a huge race, both of them raising a lot of money, powerful endorsements on both sides, but I have a lot of audio with both of them, 939theeagle.com. I put it up on kws.com as well because it does include Callaway County, but I encourage people to listen to that, listen to what they have to say. And
Jesus has a lot of background in Cole County, even.
He does. Well, yes, he's argued several cases. I can't tell you how many cases, probably 3 or 4 high-profile cases I covered where he basically represented the state, him and Mark Sauer, John Sauer, I should say, John Sauer, on cases when he was when John Sauer was
in front of the
solicitor.
Supreme Court.
Well, that would he did that, but I also covered a number of them where he was in Cole County Circuit Court.
Yeah.
And before they'd ever go to the Missouri Supreme Court.
Now, honest to goodness, folks, you would think that Brian Hauswirth and I had a conversation over the weekend. I mean, we did. Did we have a conversation?
We did not.
Guess who's going to be on the program at 8:08?
Well, I saw the logo.
Jesus Osete.
Yeah.
And I've been impressed with Jesus since I got to know him as part. He interviewed me when he was with the Attorney General's office concerning the lawsuit where Attorney General then Schmidt and others across the nation filed a suit against the Biden administration to stop the mandate for vaccines in hospitals, right? And that's when I got to know Jesus. I had an enormous amount of respect for him. I want to ask him about this Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals decision in Mississippi saying that if mail-in ballots don't come in by Election Day, they can't be counted afterwards. And also the federal judge who said that Virginia has to reinstate registrations for over 1,500 self-proclaimed non-citizens because of some federal election law that you can't systematically do. So we're going to ask him because he's a constitutional scholar in my book. And Stephanie Morrill may be too, but I don't think she's argued in front of the Supreme Court.
Stephanie Morrill has not argued, but she has prosecuted a lot of. I can tell you she's prosecuted a lot of cases. They're both very well respected.
That's good.
Jesus Osete has an amazing story about how he grew up and somehow ended up graduating from Washington University.
You got that bio from his beginnings?
I talked to him.
Adopted, and I mean, all that.
I mean, amazing. It's just, I've talked to him about that.
Can't wait to read it.
Eric Schmidt has endorsed, so has Attorney General Bailey, and CPOA has endorsed, by the way, Judge Morrill. Yes. So has former Chief Jones.
CPOA has endorsed Morrill.
Yes.
Wow.
And it's in my story. I encourage people, you really need to look at the story. You really need to look because you'll be able to see there's some powerful people on both sides.
Okay. All right. Well, there's Brian Hauswirth. He'll be back with more later. And the whole gang.
Families can be deported together.
That's Tom Homan, former ICE director under Trump. Here's Stephanie Bell with the Daily DC Rundown.
He was on 60 Minutes yesterday, but of course the border and deportation was high on the list of things that were talked about at Madison Square Garden at the big Trump rally yesterday, and I think on a lot of voters' minds as we head into the final days. This question has been addressed here more recently. Randy, you and I have been talking about when will we actually know who won? And last time, I think it took 5 days for the major outlets to start issuing a projection. But we are being assured now that because there are fewer mail-in ballots and because in some of the states they changed some policies, that we should know much more quickly. Now, whether or not we actually know on Election Day, we don't. But I'm glad to kind of see folks zeroing in on that and saying we're gonna figure this out earlier. Also, something that we've kind of that kind of fell off my radar was will RFK have any sway here? He wanted to get off the ballot, but the fact of the matter is they didn't let him off the ballot in every state, right. And so he's going to be on the ballot in states like Michigan and Wisconsin. And whether or not it's close enough that makes a difference, I think has kind of gotten out of the limelight. But I think on election night, people are going to be like, oh gosh, that 1 or 2% could be a big deal. So
did you see, speaking of Michigan, did you see where some of the Arab American community, the Muslim community, imams and others were up there on the stump during a Trump rally endorsing him?
It's a big deal. Yeah. Trump's got a big tent, and we are seeing all sorts of people back him. The other thing I thought that was interesting at the end of last week or over the weekend is the Washington Post declined to issue an endorsement. They've had tons of resignations and other, that people are all ablaze on Twitter. Randy, I mean, what do you think it's because Harris is such a bad candidate?
Or Bezos and the tech Silicon Valley billionaire who owns the LA Times are protecting their business interests? I don't know. Maybe a little bit of both.
I think a little bit of both, but I think it is a big deal. And I think as we, with newspapers having such a bent, I think these days, whether or not that will be a trend with other papers or whether or not it will swing back the other way, I don't know. But I do think that's an interesting development. Also, Trump advisors are thinking it's leaked out that, to the extent he's elected and then he starts to make appointments that they might not use the FBI, that they might use some sort of private service for background checks. And how can you trust the FBI after what, they're reporting it as almost like it seems like something strange or a surprise. I'm not surprised at all. If the FBI continues to exist under Trump in its current form, I think you'd be kidding yourself if
Randy Tobler. It's great to be with you guys, even though Mizzou stunk up the place. MIZWTH. What happened?
I have no idea. It was ugly.
Total
I was feeling
collapse.
good the first half. I was like, well, it's not terrible.
Brady Cook got banged up, and it was all downhill from there.
Yeah.
What was the injury? Was it an arm injury? Or
He hit his hand on a helmet at least once or twice.
Oh, okay. Man.
On top of sitting out of practice the whole week, trying to nurse his high ankle sprain.
Yeah, boy, oh boy, I'm telling you. It's just doesn't seem to have the same verb as the team did last year. I mean, I think they've pulled a couple out of the fire that have been, really gutsy victories. That's good to see. But you don't have the powerhouse running back. You don't have the kicker you can just definitely count on, almost automatic.
Yeah, Alabama held Luther Burden to a whole lot of nothing.
Yeah. I'm no expert on football by any means, but does the Mr. Pine, the substitute,
the backup quarterback? Yeah.
He seems short to me, and I just was looking at him trying to with these towering linemen. It just seems as though just from a physical, stature standpoint, it's got to be tough for a quarterback to get a view of the field. I mean, Brady Cook's pretty tall, and even a tall quarterback has a difficulty doing that. Now, of course, Patrick Mahomes isn't super tall. I guess I don't know, but I just noticed that just seemed to be a real disadvantage there. What a tough job, though, to come in and try to engineer an offense like that, when you don't get the first snap, during practice and everything. So hats off to him for yeoman's effort, but man, tough.
It was a rugged afternoon.
Wow.
But the Chiefs.
Yeah, the Chiefs, though, man, they look good, huh? Kelsey got his share for a change.
He did. He was on fire.
Yeah. They've been using him more as a deke, I think, and then going to that Gray, number 83. Isn't that his name? Gray, I think, the other tight end. Did I have that right?
Yep.
Yeah, and they're playing small ball. It reminds me of a football version of Whitey ball from the old Cardinals in the 80s, 80s and 90s.
White Rat, Whitey Herzog.
Yeah, Whitey Herzog. Just basically, a lot of, singles, doubles, running, stealing bases, stealing home, just small ball. And
that was classic Andy Reid yesterday. I mean, that was. It's all with all the injuries and everything the Chiefs had. This is all about Andy Reid.
It was great to see. I mean, it's they're just finding a way to, as Stephanie likes to say, win. Right? It may not be. It may not be the most exciting football in the world, but they're winning. So you don't see the long bombs. You don't see those huge plays down the field. But hey, we'll take it.
I know it's out of state, but did anybody happen to catch the last 6 seconds of the Commanders game?
Commanders Bears, man, oh man, that had to have been the best ending to a game in years.
Okay, so John, give us Hannah. Who wants to give the call here? The last 6 minutes, last 6 seconds. You got to describe that last play.
I'll defer to the legend.
Okay, John, you got to give the call on that last
right
play.
Down to the tail end of it, and the Commanders had held the Bears in check, and the Bears came right at the end of the game, scored a touchdown. Then, with just seconds left on the clock, the Commanders got possession of the ball right down to the wire. Threw up the Hail Mary pass 65 yards, went right into the defenders who tipped it up into the arms of the Commanders receiver for a touchdown and won the game.
I mean, there was a whole cluster right there at the front of the end zone of probably at least 5 players.
At least, yeah.
Just all with their hands in the air trying to catch it. It bounces off of them, and there's this guy just standing behind them who just happened to be in the right place at the right time.
He's all alone in the end zone.
And he looks as surprised as the audience that, hey, where'd this come from?
And what was cool,
cool.
At the beginning of the play, the quarterback had to scramble. I mean, he ran around for a good 6-7 seconds, right?
Oh, I think the play took 20-some seconds to finally get the ball down into the end zone. It was cool.
You never know what's going to happen. It looked like a tip ball in basketball,
It was wild.
Well, and again, speaking of the end zone, Travis Kelce just had his first touchdown of the season last night. I thought that was wild.
Wild. Yeah, he was positive on catching the ball, and I mean, he seemed to be on his game. So
It was National Tight End Day or something.
Yeah,
And there
that's what they
was-
said.
And there was a big matchup over the weekend. You just mentioned basketball, Randy, and I'm getting
Mm-hmm.
very excited because I like basketball way more than I like football. So the kids are
Especially after
transitioning.
Friday.
Yeah, yeah, we're gonna get there, I'm sure.
Probably at 7:10.
when
Yeah,
Scott
I had-
Faughn joins us,
I had the similar feelings on Friday night that I did on Saturday watching Mizzou. But anyway, our Mizzou had an exhibition game against Lincoln University. We knew that was coming up, but I saw that it happened this weekend. Of course, Mizzou ran away with it, but that's to be expected. My own Truman State has had to come down here and play Mizzou in exhibition before, and it was a bit ugly. But it's nice to see, Lincoln playing Mizzou and Mizzou getting ready for the basketball season. Hopefully, they can do something better with their season this year than they did last.
hey, speaking of other state news, there's some news that I thought was interesting. I hadn't seen this on the radar, but apparently one of the annoyances in life, renewing your driver's license, will be a little streamlined, right? The Department of Revenue is activating new equipment intended to reduce aggravation, speed up lines, and get all of its systems talking to one another. I don't know, and a tablet for the customer. What is this
I got
about?
my driver's license a month or so ago at the Jefferson City License Bureau, and hats off to them. Took me about 10 minutes.
Which one? The one down on the east side? Is there only
Yes.
one now? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
the one
that
out
me
by
too.
Super Gerbs, that one out there.
Yes, I did that one, John, maybe 6 months ago, and I think it was like 7 minutes. I have never. It was incredible.
Wow. Well, this new process, every other renewal, so every 12 years, because now that you renew it every 6 years, you can avoid the trip to the office for a license and do it online with this new system.
That will be
Interesting.
lovely.
I
See,
mean,
what's interesting about this, though, is our DMVs are actually run by private contractors,
Yeah.
many of whom I engage with in my professional capacity. So I'm going to have to check in to see if they like this because, it's privately run. And so the state issues these contracts. So I don't know how the private people who are doing this now, and like John and I just pointed out, doing a really good job, is going to appreciate this new stuff being provided by the government for a job that they're already doing pretty well.
Potentially cut back on employees. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
well, or instead of taking some of the wraps that they occasionally do because of long lines and it takes forever to get something done with your tag renewal, maybe it'll expedite that process. They'll have better vibes, and people will, be happier.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know how the industry is reacting to that.
Yeah.
Well, for a lot of tags out there, you can do those online in Missouri, too.
Mm-hmm.
So this is interesting. Now, the second phase of this, which will be operational in July of 26, will connect the Department of Revenue to auto dealerships. Will be required to start collecting sales tax on vehicles at the time of sale. Is that because some people don't pay their tax?
Yes.
Yep, that's the law that went on the books. So you're responsible for your sales tax when you lay down the money to buy the vehicle.
And I think it just like also helps with transparency because a lot of people are caught off guard. I know when they're like, "Oh shoot, I thought I just took out a loan and it's going to be a lot of money, and now I have to go pay this huge sum over here."
Perhaps you saw. Speaking of taxes, late last week, I think was it the first time on Rogan, or was it the rally or two before that, when Trump's floating the idea of doing away with income taxes, without much other detail on this. I'm for it. I think if we replaced the income tax with a fair tax, it would be awesome. I just don't.
Tell us more about that.
The fair tax?
Yeah.
It's awesome. The fair tax is an embedded sales tax, if you will, that's paid at the point of purchase. So, and the best way to explain it is what they do is they roll in corporate tax goes away, personal income tax goes away, Social Security withholding goes away, and they roll all this in. And between 22 and 24%, there's other numbers out there. We ought to get a fair tax guy on. I've been involved with the organization in the past, but haven't been as active recently.
Heck, talk to Gary Nolan.
Yeah, but and so the myth that is promulgated about it is that, oh, you mean my dollar loaf of bread? Is there a dollar loaf of bread anymore? No. But the dollar loaf of bread is going to now cost $1.25? No. it's going to cost $1, but the retailer sends the money sends the tax into the state. Now, what that means is, and there's more intricacies than that, but also with that is what's called a prebate, so that it's not a regressive tax, right? So that everyone, if you have you have 5 in your family, right? So you would get a prebate for a family of 5 that would cover toilet paper and eggs and bacon and food and clothing. Basically, it'd be, depending on the calculations, of course, change as the cost of living goes up. But it's a way to, and they've done calculations. And one of the examples I saw was, like, for example, if they took someone like a John Kerry, who's part of the Kerry Heinz fortune or the Heinz fortune, he would pay plenty of his fair share because of that yacht. That yacht, would be paid. There'd be taxes. He wouldn't be deducting that. That wouldn't be a business expense anymore because you're not reporting income and then deducting against it. The accountants out there are not happy about this. Although I've talked to accountants, they said we have plenty of work to do. That's okay. We'd do without that. I've talked to accountants like that. So it would be a upheaval change, but along with that, you'd have to have a constitutional amendment that would do away with the income tax. You can't have both.
The proponents have talked about it too, being an answer to the undocumented crowd out there, who presumably might not be paying income tax, but they're sure as heck have to pay the sales tax when they go to the store.
And a consumption tax is fundamentally a progressive tax, right? Because if you got enough money to buy Mar-a-Lago and put marble on the walls and gold sconces, you're going to pay for it.
I think I'm like high consumption, so I'm not loving the idea.
Oh, so Stephanie doesn't like this.
But I mean, also, on the income tax, I feel like I get, it's a pretty big hit. So.
Right, and I
don't know if I've never done the math to see like what the.
Well, when they do the math, they find out that folks that are in the upper incomes will actually maybe pay is it a skosh more? Is that right? A skosh more? Did I get that right? But really, it would not be sort of unfairly advantaged for the rich. In fact, it may extract a little bit more. But
in my mind, I'm already like, how do I get chickens and some land and grow my own food? And that's when I would turn.
You'll have to pay personal property taxes on those chickens.
Yeah, that's when I would turn into a homesteader.
But more than anything, it would increase.
No, you wouldn't.
Oh, come on, Hannah.
No, you wouldn't.
Think of how much. Now, again, I don't mean to offend tax accountants and attorneys who deal with taxes and all these kind of setting up these. But
there it is.
They're very smart people, and I will say to my dying day that if those people were to put their efforts in change the world, productive, build a new static energy Atlas Shrugged energy plant rather than trying to game the income tax system and find loopholes. Think how much more productive America would be than it already is. I mean, I just think that there would be so much more productivity because there would be an advantage to just doing a better job and then just paying a consumption tax rather than trying to
off the healthy body parts of young children without 100% we are doing that.
Well, we are definitely doing that.
Without
I mean, when you got Bill Maher agreeing with Megyn Kelly, that was her on his show the other night, and she looks out into the audience when there's a sigh, when they're like, oh, are you kidding? Some audience people, are you kidding? She says, we are definitely doing that. And he can't deny it. One thing you say about Bill Maher, he says, let's be honest, abortion is, he said it. I mean, I'm paraphrasing. He says, yeah, we are killing young humans, but I'm okay with it. That's essentially what Bill has said in the past. At least he's transparent and he's honest about his opinion, right, as he is about this particular issue. And if there's an issue that is important to every woman, whether it's herself or her mom or her sister or her daughter, it's got to be not only what happens to our nation's children when they're confused and unclear about where they are in life and what their body is, their body begins to change. I mean, they go through these things. But of course, the whole other side of this issue is, men in women's spaces, whether it's locker room, bathroom, or on the sports field, some of which can be harmful to women directly. I don't mean just offensive because you're seeing a guy in your bathroom, but I mean, what about these? We've seen these videos with people being injured, women being injured when it's more of a contact sport kind of a situation. It's just not fair.
No.
And I would think that women that are getting so worked up about the abortion and so-called bodily rights ought to have a right to protection of their body and their dignity. I mean, doesn't that bear on some women just as much as Amendment 3, abortion? I don't know. I'm not one.
I think for those people, probably not. But as a mother of two young girls
Yes.
who both play sports, certainly I have concerns, as they get older in, their safety. And I mean, I have the same concerns about my son when he plays football. I'm concerned about his safety, and I think there are rules. I've mentioned this before, but like when they're very young and they're different sizes, there are rules that protect the smaller kids from the bigger kids. And so why we would then allow boys to play against my girls who are also very small, I would have serious reservations about and would consider pulling them out of sports, because I would want, I always tell them that like their brains are more important and that we will choose that first.
Well, I think of my precious little nieces, my little Remy and Evie. And I think of them and I wonder, is it going to be a guidance counselor, some left, woke, progressive, whack job guidance counselor in a few years when they have struggles? I mean, who knows? Is someone going to say, hey, wink, wink, you're not feeling good about yourself? Hey, go see this psychologist, get an okay, and we'll find a surgeon and, take care of things. I mean, that's where we're at in this country.
Well, and that's
as a grandpapa, I think about that.
Yeah. And that's where we could be at if Amendment 3 passes.
Yes, ma'am.
No parental notification.
A huge election. Welcome into Wake Up Mid-Missouri. We welcome Scott Faughn, the publisher of the Missouri Times and the host of This Week in Missouri Politics. How you doing, Scott?
It sounds so good to hear the state pronounce in the mother tongue.
Okay, so let's talk about why I came in saying that, because I do say Missouri, but okay, let's explain this.
Well, you're from St. Louis, Randy. You come by it honestly. However, Stephanie Bell is a Cole County gal, and for some reason she'd been co-opted by the liberal media and started saying Missouri as though she was on the plaza or the Central West End. When she's from Missouri, she's putting on airs. So I decided, you know who you go to when you have a tough problem no one can solve? You go to Turbo Ted LePage, the coach of the Blair Oaks Falcons. And we made
Turbo
a bet
Ted.
a year ago that she lives in Columbia Junior, and they go to Southern Columbia Junior High School.
Rude.
Oh, man.
Rude.
Oh, she's taking
So I
it
made
today.
a bet that the old country boys from Wardsville, all 1,400 in the town, would come up to Columbia Junior, and I figured they'd win because, well, history. And she bet on her as a loyal Ashlander, she bet on her Southern Boone team to win. And if I had lost, I would have to say the state as though I was a Prius driving, Starbucks drinking person in the Central West End. And if Blair Oaks Falcons won, she would have to pronounce Missouri like a good Missouri gal. And luckily, Ted LePage not only won, but he won by so much they started the clock running continuously in the third quarter. It was only 42-0. I thought it was a very generous amount of grace he gave to Southern Boone, but it was 42-0.
Y'all.
One of your probably better showings against Blair Oaks, really.
I mean, even California scored at least one touchdown when they
Rude.
played Blair Oaks.
It was our
Well,
senior
that was
night.
awfully nice of Coach LePage.
And I will always be in the corner of Southern Boone. And there are so many things better and more important than football. But I was happy that
Name
you did
one.
Stephanie, could you by chance name one?
all of them.
Exactly.
Actually, I have one, and it's not football, but it's still sports. Friday, the Centralia softball team is playing against Blair Oaks in the
Ooh.
state quarterfinals. Goodness.
That's awesome.
And I saw a soccer game between a Jeff City team and a Blair Oaks team. There was a big soccer tournament in Jefferson City this weekend, which was nice. But Scott did bring his people to Ashland, and we did have a nice dinner there at Jose Jalapenos and enjoyed it.
It was great.
It was a chilly evening, but we had a really good time and saw some other friends from government at the game. So either way, it's going to take us a little bit of time to catch up. But I think, we're a growing program.
I have to tell you that that's right. You have to start somewhere.
Yeah. It's just this wasn't our
Competing is
you
the
didn't
first step.
start with any points Friday night, but I mean that's
come
also good for.
Apparently,
I thought it was a beautiful field for Blair Oaks to come up and play every other year.
yeah. Apparently,
We always do so well, and I guess the district championships or whatever are starting soon. And it's like we get to the very last. We just hit a brick wall whenever we meet Blair Oaks. If we hit them in the first round, we're out. If we don't hit them till the last round, we'll get to like the semifinals. I mean, we're good, but there's just I don't know. There's something about Blair Oaks. You guys got
Leadership
this special
matters.
sauce.
Just like Donald Trump would tell you, leadership matters.
now Tanner Kemna from Kemna Collision
Oh,
says,
no, we don't need to read his text.
"Go Falcons."
No.
Sorry, Scott. It's not Missouri. It's Missouri. I don't know. I'm sorry. That's what Tanner says. So there's there's a little tension here, a little disagreement on Monday
I
morning.
don't know.
over
I've had my truck fixed at Kemna before, and when I picked it up, the guy said that's how we do it here in Missouri. I don't know if the whole Kemna family is on that.
Tanner's
boat, 'cause
mom
I
and dad,
actually used-
probably.
Yeah, I've used Kemna Collision Repair before. Great company, and I felt a little more at home.
Now, we need to be careful about the whole Missouri versus Missouri debate.
Yeah.
Because last time we had this conversation, I got a really hateful voicemail from some dude.
I got a question for you. If we're looking at the Senate race, Scott, does Lucas Kuntz and Josh Hawley, do they say Missouri or Missouri? Do you know?
Well, then, I mean, they might say Missouri, but those close scream Missouri.
What about the
Randy,
hair?
you got to take your man, Holly, out and you got to take him shopping at Buckeyes or something. He needs to buy some clothes at the same place you can buy some feed.
Scott, have you had a chance to check in with the reporter who was injured at the Kuntz range experience there?
Oh, man, I thought that had the potential to be the best day in the Kuntz campaign. I mean, you telling me there's anybody listening this morning to wake up mid-Missouri in the back of an implement dealership that wouldn't think it's hilarious to shoot a reporter? I mean, it was all – I mean, it's not like he did it on purpose, but then he's like – his picture was him putting a bandage on it. I'm like, Trump would never have done that. He gave the guy a handful of dirt to rub on it.
Yeah,
got national press on it though. A national press. That's wild.
Josh Hawley yesterday on Twitter says somebody should tell Kuntz it's the show me state, not the shoot me state.
My favorite. I thought Josh Hawley, who's not really known for comedy, has been hilarious with this. 10 on 10. I saw one that said, "Guns don't shoot people. Lucas Kuntz does." Great. He has been outstanding making fun of him.
He had another line where he said he knew Kuntz's campaign needed a shot in the arm, but this took it a little too far.
But really, I mean, Scott, we thought that, that margin might be closer than some of the other races, and even in some circumstances, I think people were speculating substantially closer. But if you're Lucas Kuntz and you're billing yourself as kind of the macho military guy, and then you do this, it kind of hurts your street cred.
Well, just own it. Don't put a Band-Aid on him. Just say, yeah, I shot you. What of it, dude? I mean, does Rambo apologize? I think the truth is Lucas Kuntz, and credit to his military service, but I feel like there's a element of Lucas Kuntz that's a little contrived, and it may just be the way it comes off, right? There's a lot of folks that are very good people and very natural, enjoyable conversationalists that when that red light comes on the TV camera, it doesn't look as genuine. And I think that's true of Lucas Kuntz. And I also think, if you look at Josh Hawley, I don't think there was anybody who was going to beat him in 2024 in the state of Missouri. Josh Hawley's a very popular politician. However, if you were going to really put a scare into Josh Hawley, the only thing Lucas Kuntz has done to do that is fundraising.
Big time.
You needed a good old boy to run against Josh Hawley, somebody that wears like normal people clothes, to do a contrast, and probably didn't go to Yale. It's been odd. No one attacks Josh Hawley for going to Yale. Claire McCaskill didn't. I don't understand. There's not a lot to attack Josh Hawley on, but I do think where you could have attacked Josh Hawley, Lucas Kuntz is simply not the right person to deliver those attacks.
I think Lucas did go to Yale, didn't he?
That's exactly right. So how are you going to make fun of that? I mean, it's like if somebody drinks Coors Light, yes, I'll make fun of them, but it's hard for another Coors Light drinker to do it.
Better Coors Light than Bud's Light. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks so much.
I'm a Bud Light drinker. I'm tolerant.
Scott Faughn is our guest here, 93.9 The Eagle and News Radio 950 KWS. Our time is 7:16. One of the big issues on the ballot as well is Proposition A. You've seen the television ad with a woman who has a sick child that is worried about her child basically being picked up from school. It would raise the minimum wage in Missouri to $13.75 per hour starting in January 2025. It would also require all employers to provide an hour of paid sick leave for every 30 hours worked. Scott, today, here in a few hours in Jefferson City, Kara Korchis, Ray McCarty, David Overfelt, Missouri Retailers, Missouri Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Associated Industry, Missouri Grocers are calling a press conference. They'll be in front of the television cameras, big press conference, 11 o'clock. They're going to urge people to vote against Proposition A. What do you see happening next week?
I see Proposition A passing. I don't even think it'll be particularly close. I just go back to history and credit them for fighting the good fight, but I think raising minimum wage is a stupid idea. I honestly think the liberals that put this on the ballot were probably too modest. I don't think they had an idea how bad Joe Biden would be at being president and how bad the economy would be. They should have asked for more. I have a lot of confidence in a Ray McCarty and a lot of good folks that you've mentioned, and I think they're right, and I'll be voting. I did vote, actually. Gussie and I went and voted Thursday. Shout out to Steve Korsmeyer. The whole lobby was filled in Jeff City. We voted on top of a trash can in Gussie. There was no place to sit. It was an awesome thing. He had that thing for all the people in the limited space. He had a great thing going. But when I voted against it. You look at history, the people of Missouri and frankly, the people of most states approve these minimum wage increases when they're on the ballot. my question to them would be, if we're already to the point of with inflation, hiring somebody for $13 an hour is hard anyway. So I'm not sure the liberals weren't. I think they underestimated Joe Biden, his ability to kick the crap out of this country with inflation, and it almost makes it irrelevant.
Talk to us about where you think the sports betting measures are going to go on the ballot, Scott.
I go back to history, and I think that anytime you have a ballot measure, like I reflexively vote no on everything, right? I reflexively just no. Does the government need to? No, just don't. You'll screw it up. Just don't mess with anything. So whenever you get it's hard to get a yes. It's harder to get somebody to vote yes than no in Missouri. And when you have an organized, funded opposition, it makes it very tough. I personally think sports betting is popular amongst the folks. Most people don't care. I doubt the average Missourian probably doesn't ever get on a DraftKings website and vote. And there's some that can get around it now. I always think it's so funny, man. You hear these liberty and freedom politicians. They run the Freedom Caucus, right? But really, they're just for the freedoms that they want, and they very much want the government to force you to not do stuff that they don't want you to do. To me, if you're freedom, if you're for liberty, get out of people's way. Let them vote on the Chiefs if they want to.
Well, there he is, Scott Faughn. Always great words. And, Scott, I know it's going to be a busy week. Just 8 days left till this election. Lots of trends nationally. I know you'll be covering the trends, statewide with some of the hot races because there are a lot of those contested races. So we look forward to your final pronouncement next week. We'll be asking you about that on next Monday's program. Thanks,
I love it, sir. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
There he is, Scott Faughn. Well, yeah, I mean, I think he's right. I mean, I don't see Prop A losing.
Well,
I don't see that losing, except it would be a miracle if that lost because people want to. This is a populous time in our country, and people want to give it to the man.
And I think it will pass too. But these business organizations, and it kind of came into this a little late. I mean, they were a week out before the election, but they are going to have it. They'll have a lot of press there. Michelle LaFata, who's a listener of our program, owns the Postal LaFata in Columbia. She's on the other side. She supports Proposition A, saying, Randy, quote, I want my employees to be able to make a living and enjoy their life. We have low employee turnover, great customer satisfaction. So Michelle LaFata at Postal LaFata, they support Proposition A.
So what in the present law prevents her from doing that? And other business people who want to pay more. I mean, what's wrong with that?
She can, but
why does she want the government to fix the cost of doing business for people?
You'd have to ask her, but I mean, she obviously, if she is saying that we buy our produce at the Columbia Farmers Market, source our meat locally, that this will help working people and businesses succeed together.
Well, God love her. I mean, God love you. That's great. So pay your people $25, $35 an hour, and then you might price yourself out of that great pasta you make because no one can afford to buy it. I mean, look, that's the market. The current thing, where is the government, where does the government have an interest in telling business people, take the business person out of it. Where does the government, it's a fundamental American question. At what point does the government have an interest to tell one individual with a essentially contractual relationship with another individual how that's supposed to be? The government's role is to enforce that contract, not to define it.
Well,
in my opinion.
How long have we had the minimum wage?
The minimum wage has been around a long time.
And I agree. I mean, I voted no, and I think it's a bad idea. But I think for a lot of people, they think that's the proper role of government, and certainly, we've had a minimum wage for a long time.
Well, they're wrong.
Okay, so previous minimum wage. Let's be fair here. Previous minimum wages on the ballot increases have been voted by not just Democrats; they pass in Republican counties too. GOP deep red counties have voted for these things in the past.
Yeah, well, occasionally you make decisions that are not good for yourself. That's okay. People have the right to do that too. When we come back, it's time for What's Hot with Hannah.
This is Wake Up
Uncrustable is?
What?
It's made by the brand Smuckers, and it's essentially like a peanut butter and jelly that they've sort of pressed together. So
in
there's
an individual
no crust.
wrapper, right?
Yeah. There's no crust. It's all like white bread, and the sides are sealed. And it's just like a self-contained little peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
It's like a ravioli or like a Hot Pocket, basically.
Yeah, there's a couple different variations of them with like strawberry jelly or Nutella.
It's small, too. It's like a hockey puck.
Yeah.
Uncrustable, you call it?
Yeah.
Okay.
But the NFL is...
Never heard of this.
So they did a study, not the NFL, but...
Uncrustables.
There was a study done looking at NFL teams and their consumption of these Uncrustables. The Chiefs' Travis Kelce has been on the record as saying he is a fan of the snack. But the study found that out of the 24 NFL teams that they surveyed at the end of the 2023 season, about 80,000 Uncrustables were being consumed by NFL teams over the course of the season.
How many?
80,000.
I thought you said that.
Yes.
1,000
That
per
is-
Player.
That is so insane. But I'm not shocked. Hannah, did you see my tweet about this? I once met a guy on a plane, as one does, and I was like, what do you do for business? And he's like, I own a trucking company. And he lived in the Midwest. And I said, well, what do you truck? And he said, I truck Uncrustables. I said, your entire business. Wait a minute, hold on. And at the time, Randy, I was with you. I was like, what the heck's an Uncrustable?
Yeah.
And so we Googled, but now it makes sense that you could run an entire trucking company, apparently just trucking Uncrustables to the NFL.
Now, the team that came in first place was the Denver Broncos, and the study found that they're consuming around 7,000 Uncrustables a week.
Oh, my God.
I have a theory on that.
Okay.
High altitude, less oxygen, higher metabolic rate. They need all the sugar. 210 calories for one of these.
Oh, of course you would.
With 28
The
grams
problem-
of carbs.
The problem is
Oh,
they're
my goodness.
frozen and they take for
impact on women that maybe some aren't thinking about when they're so laser focused on that. And I'm going to ask Stephanie about one particular thing that's getting a lot of pushback from the pro-choice side with pro-life critics. We've got, of course, Amendment 7, which is the, only citizens voting. There were a couple of one federal judge and a Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals ruling late last week that affects, I think, can have an impact on voter registration and when votes can be tallied that would have national impact potentially if they make it to the Supreme Court, depending on how those go. We're going to talk with Jesus Osete about that. Of course, he's a candidate in the only contested judge race in the state, right, John?
Sounds right.
I think so.
I think it is.
I think so. The others are you have to affirm, what is it, like reinstate the judge or, Isn't that,
or there's judges who are running unopposed as well.
Retention vote.
Retention votes. So there's 2 Supreme Court justices up for those, right?
Yeah. And I did see there's some ads out by Democrats kind of targeting them because they didn't like how they handled the abortion case. The
ballot language?
Yeah, the judges both dissented in that case. And
no, that's
the
right.
Democrats are kind of targeting them, saying they're not for, which is really making that political, and I haven't seen that done before. I voted to retain both of the judges.
That was and I was going to ask you if we had any specifics on there, and I'd looked that up. So that was the case that at the last minute, it went to the Supreme Court of Missouri, stating that because the provisions in the Constitution that would be repealed, specific, name, date, and serial number, I'm just kidding, of the Constitution that would be repealed and laws that would be repealed weren't listed specifically, right?
And so the court put it on the ballot and said it's going to go to voters. These 2 judges actually dissented.
Right, they dissented. What, 4-3?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I found that they dissented, I was like, okay, I think I'll retain them.
Yeah, I voted to retain both of them.
Yeah, okay. But this is Jesus is like is a contested one with presiding associate circuit judge, right? So in every circuit, there's the circuit judge, and then there's the associate circuit judges. But there can be more than one judge in a circuit, right?
Yes.
Like in Boone County.
Be like Cole and have more than one associate circuit judge as well.
I don't think people understand all that structural stuff like that. One thing I do understand, though, is that Michelle Obama is sounding pretty desperate. And I'm going to play a longer clip. It's about a minute, but you listen to this and imagine that you are a guy out there and Michelle Obama is lecturing you on how let's just say conservatives prevail and abortion is federalized to the extent of what I mean is returned to the states rather than nationalized with a abortion ban nationally, which Donald Trump has said he's absolutely against. They continue to lie about his stance on that. He's caught some heck. Some evangelicals are staying home. Many of you listening may stay home because he is not for a national abortion ban without exception. And many evangelicals and other Christians will say, nope, I'm sorry. It's all or nothing. And I understand that. I totally get it. It's not politically expedient, but I understand it on principle. But he has not said that. Here was Michelle speaking on women's health at a Harris rally in Michigan. Take a very close listen to the lies and the deception that's embedded in this statement.
To the men who love us, let me just try to paint a picture of what it will feel like if America, the wealthiest nation on earth, keeps revoking basic care from its women, and how it will affect every single woman in your life. Your girlfriend could be the one in legal jeopardy if she needs a pill from out of state or overseas, or if she has to travel across state lines because the local clinic closed up. Your wife or mother could be the ones at higher risk of dying from undiagnosed cervical cancer because they have no access to regular gynecological care. Your daughter could be the one too terrified to call the doctor if she's bleeding during an unexpected pregnancy. Your niece could be the one miscarrying in her bathtub after the hospital turned her away. And this will not just affect women, it will affect you and your sons. The devastating consequences of teen pregnancy won't just be borne by young girls, but also by the young men who are the fathers.
I'm sorry. I about went ballistic when I heard that. Especially, I mean, they've cleverly defined basic health care as abortion. First of all, it's not, by definition, it's definitionally deceptive and deceitful to call that health care when it has nothing to do about the health of the entity that is destroyed, right? You can call it medical care. I would argue, I think logically it's not health care, but there's more. Cervical cancer, your mom or your grandma is going to get cervical cancer because they can't get access. Come on into my office today, ladies. If you can't get access for a pap smear, I can handle that today. Meet me at 11 o'clock in the office.
And you can
not
go
a problem.
To like the county.
I mean, they get county health departments, primary care doctors. Are you kidding me?
Are people being? I mean, no one's being turned away.
How deceitful!
Right? I mean,
I just don't get that. And then, so if someone's having a miscarriage, they're going to be bleeding in their bathtub because a doctor won't take care of them? What? I'm almost speechless over this. It's so deceitful.
The number of miscarriages that go on every day, every week. I have friends who've had miscarriages in Missouri and had to seek care over a miscarriage. The fact that they're telling you if you're having a miscarriage that you're not going to be able to be cared for, I think is a lie.
Okay, and so, look, I have raised questions and concerns about Missouri's existing law. There are technically some exposures for doctors who would terminate a pregnancy in the tube. The most prominent one I can think of is a tubal pregnancy, an extrauterine pregnancy. They're mostly in the tube. They rarely can happen intra-abdominally or on the ovary, but for the most part, in the tube. I have personally taken care of cases where on ultrasound, you could see a little flickering heartbeat. That's pretty rare for tubal pregnancies. Usually it's just a mass of preplacental cells causing a lot of bleeding internally, and everyone knows what to do, right?
But I think in the law right now, it defines abortion as the termination of a viable pregnancy. So at that point, you would determine that a tubal pregnancy is not viable, even if there's a heartbeat flicker.
But some people call viable, they use the word wrongly. They would call viable if a heartbeat is there, because we do have a heartbeat bill. So, I mean, doctors, I think, would go crazy being paranoid about being prosecuted. I would proudly take care of that pregnancy with a heartbeat in the tube and be happy to argue my case on that one. And I think 99.9% of doctors would do that. With a little bit of refinement, the law as it stands could be really refined and really eliminate all those issues, right? But I mean, it is just so deceitful to say that women are going to get cervical cancer if Donald Trump's elected. Really? A little bit of a stretch? Maybe just a wee bit? Yeah. I mean, really? Okay. Can you address, Stephanie, in a couple of minutes, the issue? So there's this issue that in the language, the text of Amendment 3, that those of us on the pro-life and the basically women's rights side have said, women's protection have said, you know, this really opens up the floodgates now, because this will banish the existing laws against transgender transition and so forth that we have. What do we know about that? The other side is saying, that's crazy. You guys, it's really a stretch. There's nothing in there about transgender.
For me, it's really two things. And so they say, well, it's not in the text that that transgender is included. Mm-hmm. But importantly, it's not in the text that transgender is excluded. And we often, and I just looked it up in the statutes, we often write definitions in this way. Here's what's included. Here's what's not included. And I just grabbed one for an example. It's the statute defines policeman, and it says any officer, police department, blah, 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 shall mean any officer, blah, 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 but shall not include any police commissioner or anyone employed in a clerical or other capacity, right? So you get the definition of this is what's part of the definition, and then it shall not include this. So when we look at how they defined reproductive freedom, they said it shall include all this big long list of things, but not limited to this list of things. But it didn't take that additional step of saying this is what's not included. Mm-hmm. And, you know, they had this debate in Ohio. In Ohio, it was raised that this definition opens up the possibility of including transgender care, gender reassignment surgeries without parental notification. It would have been very easy, Randy, at the end of that first sentence to just say reproductive health care does not include gender affirming care, or however you want to define that. And that was a conscious choice by the drafters of this amendment not to exclude it, because what we know is they think it's the same thing. And they keep pointing at us saying, hey, you guys are including trans here when trans is not a part of reproductive health care. Go look, just start Googling around the internet. You know, the ACLU has been on the leading side of litigating all of these, trying to knock down pro-life laws in other states after they pass these. But you can pull an article right off of the ACLU's website that says the intertwined future of attacks on abortion and gender-affirming care. A quote from the article there: "You are the rightful author of your own life story. Both abortion and gender-affirming care give us the freedom to determine our own paths." So when they're talking about reproductive freedom, they write it about these things like they're the same. I found another article on the National Women's Law Center, and the title is "Reproductive Rights Include Bodily Autonomy for Trans and Intersex Youth."
Yeah.
So to them, they're the same. And so the fact that they're telling us now that, you know, they're trying to say, you guys are saying this. No, you've been saying this all along, and you're trying to, you know, to get this through by by misleading voters. And I think they intentionally didn't exclude it because they want it to be included. And I think they're going to go to the courts and argue that it is included.
As a practical matter, I mean, they're going to say, hey, we have a right to, you know, of course it has something to do with reproductive freedom because these are reproductive parts that we're dealing with, right? So by definition, it's reproductive. So it's not, they're accusing us of conflating when actually it's a very strong conviction on their part.
It is.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for unpacking that for us. We can always count on Stephanie to do that. Mr. John, what do you have coming up on your segment, brother?
How about a haunted house with real guts, real gore? experience personalized to each guest. It's a 6-hour-long tour. You're required to sign a 40-page waiver. You need to be over 21, and we're known for no quitting and no safe word, says owner, retired Navy veteran Russ McCamey. During the tour, employees of the manor may physically assault patrons, waterboard them, force them to eat and drink unknown substances, have them bound and gagged. Participants may also be drugged during their experience. Your hair may be chopped off with rusty clippers, and you may even have a tooth extracted. On a sidebar, the owner, McCamey, was arrested in July for attempted murder after an incident with his girlfriend, but the charges were dropped, and he says, yes, McCamey Manor is up and running, and now you know the rest of that story.
You didn't make that up, huh?
No.
Sounds like a trip to Jeffrey Epstein's place.
Yeah,
Holy
no
cow.
kidding. 6-hour tour? Who wants to go in a haunted house for 6 hours?
What attorney would ever what attorney would ever be a part of that agreement that you have to sign? Probably none, right? I can't imagine.
Apparently, they've even opened a satellite location in Huntsville, Alabama. So
you could get a tooth extracted? No.
Hey, come after you with rusty clippers and shave off part of your hair and waterboard you.
Oh, my goodness. Wow. I guess I've never been through a haunted house, but I've read about them where sometimes people do get a little concerned about, being physically touched or slapped or whatever,
Well, there's some pretty realistic ones here in mid-Missouri, I'll tell you what.
A lot of the haunted houses, like, they're not allowed to touch you.
Yeah.
Until you get into the more intense ones where you go in knowing that they're allowed to touch you. But one of the more popular ones around here, Fear Fest, they haven't been able to open this year because of like electrical issues. And that's been a big loss for, I hate to say the community because that sounds dramatic, but I mean, it's a super popular haunted attraction.
Yeah,
and they haven't been able to open.
So people really seek out this kind of thrill seeking, huh? That's wild.
Kind of takes it to the next level with a 40-page waiver. It's like, what am I getting into here, and how much does this cost for 6 hours of being beat up?
Evan texts us, why not just go to North Korea?
There you go.
See, I like scary movies because I know they're not real, but I don't like haunted houses because it feels more real. And I'm a very jumpy person, so I don't do well with jump scares.
You're a jumpy person, but you submit yourself to horror movies.
Yeah, but they're not real,
But the worst is my kids got into that for a little bit, like where someone's like hiding around a door or something, even not in a haunted house context, and you're like coming home, you're busy, and then they jump out, and I hate that. I hate it. And so if they were to jump out and have a scary mask on or something, I would be dead. Like, no, thank you.
I've been known to flail when I get like scared really badly. My
Get
sister
clobbered by Hannah.
My sister-in-law tried to scare me from behind one time, and I backhanded her.
Oh.
And actually took a chunk of skin out of her forehead with my thumb. I hit her so hard. And then there was another time my brother was filming me while hiding around the corner in the dark. And when he scared me, I flailed and knocked his phone onto the concrete. And it broke.
No. So
I don't do it on purpose, obviously. I can't help it.
What was the resolution to that, may I ask? When you knocked his phone were you then accountable for that? Did it break the phone?
I think it cracked the camera lens or something.
And you
the resolution was he never did that again, right?
It's not my fault that he decided to scare me.
Oh,
And it's not like I intentionally broke his phone.
There were some really good Halloween costumes over the weekend. A lot of the ones I saw that were the best were related to the Olympics.
The break dancer.
Remember the pole vaulter?
Yeah.
Oh.
There was a couple of those. The shooter guy, the Turkish shooting guy. Remember him?
Everyone thought he was like
He showed up with like no fancy stuff and just won the shooting competition. You guys got to know who this guy is.
I know who you're talking about.
Anyway, there were a lot of really good ones.
So that guy, the pole vaulter guy, that was the guy that some stuff got in the way.
That's right. They called him Breezy, as I think is the nickname.
Yeah, that costume can be used next year to do Baryshnikov. It can be one of those ballet dancers. Those guy ballet dancers, they do the same thing. Hey, let's see what Jesus Osete has to say about a couple of election integrity things, voter registration in Virginia, and oh, Stephanie's breaking me up here. We'll be back.
By just the tip.
Broadcasting live from the Zimmer Communications World Headquarters. This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Get ready, pal.
Here's your host, Randy Tobler.
Hey, welcome back into Wake Up Mid-Missouri. If you're just joining us, thank you for that. 8 days till the election. Of course, a lot of topics, a lot of sidebar issues that, well, may not be so sidebar, particularly when we talk about election integrity. A couple of court decisions came down, one a federal judge, the other a federal appeals court last week, that I think could have impact depending on if and how and what happens if they go to the Supreme Court. So I contacted Jesus Osete, who's, of course, a candidate for circuit judge here in the area. Jesus, I thought, no better person than you to talk about this. Welcome into the program.
Thanks, Randy, for having me this morning. Good to see everybody.
So the first thing that caught my attention was the Fifth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals opinion that sent the Republican National Committee's challenge back to a lower court to determine whether a Mississippi statute should be immediately blocked or whether it's too close for the election to call. Apparently, there's dispute over whether mail-in ballots that are postmarked by Election Day but arrive late are eligible for counting. I guess the state of Mississippi extends that by 1 day or so, or I don't know how long, but the circuit judge said, well, no, the federal law preempts that. Tell us about it and what your take on it is.
Yeah, so basically, Congress, through federal law, has established a singular, uniform election day, which is, November 5th, in this case, to select members of Congress and also to select the president. And essentially, Mississippi, what it did, like many states did in the height of COVID, is Mississippi allowed for ballots to be mailed in and that they would be counted so long as they were postmarked on or before Election Day as set by federal law. But those ballots, you remember back during, COVID that there were issues with the mail and there's all these delays and stuff. Mm-hmm. Mississippi basically said, as long as your ballot is postmarked on or before Election Day, even if we don't receive it until up to 5 days after the election, it's still going to be an eligible cast vote for that election. And the upshot is basically, the Fifth Circuit, which is the federal court of appeals that oversees Louisiana, Mississippi, and Texas, and a bunch of other states, said no, because Congress has established a uniform election day. There's basically a distinction between the casting of a ballot, so when you fill out that ballot, and the receipt of that ballot. And as I understand the opinion, which is about 22 pages long, the court is focused on the voting concludes on Election Day and has to conclude on Election Day. And that happens when the official receives that ballot and it gets into state custody. But because that's happening in Mississippi after Election Day and up to 5 days after Election Day, then voting is essentially, according to the court's logic, is happening after Election Day, and that can't be the case because federal law says voting has to conclude on Election Day. And so that's kind of the upshot of it, basically. I think Mississippi is only a handful of states. I forget how many there are, maybe California, North Carolina, or the other states that do this, that established this up to 5 day rule after Election Day to get mail-in ballots because of COVID. And I believe they ended up just codifying that into law, in perpetuity. So, they now have it on the books, whereas I think other states just used it as a temporary measure. And that's why the RNC got involved, because they said, hey, federal law says this, so we need to make sure that we're enforcing federal law the right way.
Well, and it's interesting because, according to the story I saw, there's 32 states that say that would agree with the circuit court that say, hey, you've got to have it by Election Day. If we don't receive it by then, we're not going to count it. At least 10 other states said it has to be received in fewer than 7 days, and several other states have set 7 days. So, you're looking at 18 states, unless you're Barack Obama, and then it would be, more because there's more than 50 states. But you're looking at 18 states that this could apply to if this were to go to the Supreme Court, right? And this could impact that. And it seems to me to be a nonpartisan issue. This is just clearly a matter of law. Read the law, right? Or you've argued in front of the Supreme Court. How would you argue this if you were the RNC? Isn't that the argument?
I think I told you before, my friend, that things are always more complicated than what they seem. I think the reality is election law, and I think Stephanie's on the line too. She'll tell you that election law is very, very complicated. And I think you're seeing this because, again, I think the states had to adopt certain measures during COVID that, even after COVID, they decided to keep in place. And, we can have a debate about that, whether or not that's sound policy. But, I suspect that if I don't know if any other courts have weighed in on the legality of, or at least trying to reconcile the federal law that establishes a singular election day and mail-in ballots that come in after Election Day. I don't know if any other courts have weighed in on this. I'm just unaware of them. But you're right, to the extent that there is another federal court of appeals that weighs in and say in North Carolina or in California, where those are different circuits, right, than the Fourth Circuit and Ninth Circuit respectively, they may disagree with the Fifth Circuit's analysis and say, no, our receipt of ballots after Election Day is totally fine.
Wow.
And that would set up a conflict that would end up going up to the Supreme Court. Now, the interesting thing, it's not going to have any immediate effect because I believe in this case the federal court did not issue an injunction that enjoins or prohibits the Mississippi law from being enforced, and therefore those ballots couldn't count.
Oh.
I think instead the Court of Appeals sent it back to the federal court to make a decision. And I don't want to speculate here, but typically federal courts are pretty weary of issuing injunctions this close to an election that enjoin election laws. There's a case out of the Supreme Court from 2005 called Purcell that says that you can't issue injunctions this close to an election. I think sometimes even that limit, Stephanie will probably correct me if I'm wrong, is something even up to 6 months before the election that we can't be changing the rules of the game, so to speak. So I don't know if an injunction is actually going to issue, but I think you're right to point out that the decision itself is pretty big, and it's going to have impact for other states that maybe have the scheme. And I think it's going to go up to the Supreme Court if, in fact, there's a conflict that they want to resolve.
Hey, just talk to us where you come down on Amendment 7, as long as we're talking about issues that are before the voters in 8 days in regard to voting issues. I think the part of it that deals with you have to be a citizen to vote, most people get, but now you read down further into it, then there's the whole kind of gray area ranked choice voting.
Yeah, so I'm gonna respectfully decline to comment on my views on Amendment 7. As a judicial candidate, I may end up having to be tasked with dealing with issues that may come before me involving Amendment 7, so I'm not going to get into that. Obviously, the thing I will tell people, and the thing I told people back when I was at the Secretary of State's office is, don't just read these amendments for the first time at the ballot box. Do your citizens a favor and read these amendments on the Secretary of State's website, read them on your sample ballot, research them carefully, look at the wording, look at the fiscal note impact, look at the things they're trying to change. I think there's even a markup in a red line provision that's on the Secretary of State's website. You can look for yourself as well. But go ahead and do your research. Make a decision for yourself as to whether or not you're going to vote or against something. Don't take my word for it. And so do your research on that.
Our guest here is Jesus Osete. He is running for judge in the Mid-Missouri Circuit that includes Boone and Callaway counties, and the judge in that case right now and has that position is Kevin Crane, who is going to be retiring. I have interviews with both Jesus Osete and Stephanie Morrill, excerpts of that on our websites, kws.com, 939theeagle.com as well. Counselor, I know you've argued before the U.S. Supreme Court, and you've talked about that, but one of the things you emphasize your interview with me, and it's on your website, is the oath that you really believe in. It's 3 quick things: support the Constitution, faithfully apply law to facts, last one, perform duties impartially. Elaborate, please.
Well, I think it's pretty simple. I mean, our system has 3 branches of government for a reason, and each performs a different function. I'm not a lawmaker as a jurist, as a judge. I'm somebody who's going to be upholding the text, structure, and history of the Constitution and the laws that are passed by the General Assembly. But it's not up to me as to what those laws should be. It's not up to me to make those laws. Instead, it's to do what Chief Justice Marshall said in 1803 in Marbury versus Madison, which is to, uphold and emphatically declare the laws of the state and of the federal government. It's emphatically the province and the duty of the judiciary to say what the law is and not what it should be. And so legislators are the ones making those normative decisions, not judges. And the executives are the ones implementing those decisions or implementing those legislative decisions that are made. But I think at the end of the day, when you come to a courtroom, it shouldn't be like social media where you only get partial truth and you only get accusations and, essentially, the court of public opinion. Instead, you have evidence. You get to confront adverse witnesses. you get a presumption of innocence, not of guilt, like in the country I was born and grew up in, Mexico, and you get robust due process protections. And at the end of the day, again, it's been said the Constitution is the strongest guarantor of freedom in human history, but it doesn't enforce itself. It relies on fair, experienced judges to enforce it. And that's the kind of record that I have. Brian, you've covered the cases I've done. Mm-hmm. It's the kind of record that I have. It's the oath that I would be taking. And that's ultimately my promise, is to be a fair and impartial jurist. And anything else is just not something I can promise.
Thank you, Counselor.
Okay, lastly, in the couple of minutes we have, another high-impact issue that I think comes to election integrity. On Friday, a federal judge told the governor there and the Secretary of State in Virginia to reinstate over 1,500 individuals who self-identified as non-citizens, therefore, according to Virginia law, were taken off of the voter rolls, and the judge said put them back on the voter rolls. And they had previously self-identified, presenting immigration documents confirming their non-citizen status, a fact recently verified by federal authorities, according to Judge Junkin. The whole crux of the matter is, should they be able to do this within 90 days, according to federal election law? What say you?
Yeah, and I'm not sure. I always tell people, it's funny because Brian's on the line too, and I always tell people, don't just look at press releases sent out from government offices, look at the court documents and look at the other filings that have been submitted. It's actually unclear whether or not the 1,500 individuals who are part of this database are in fact non-citizens. I think the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, who issued a decision late last night, even said that the parties in the case didn't even know if they were in fact non-citizens. And in fact, unfortunately, there were some individuals who are actually U.S. citizens and eligible voters that were part of that, 1,500. Basically, the upshot here is there's a federal law that says that states cannot, quote unquote, systematically remove non-eligible voters 90 days out from an election from the voter rolls. And essentially what the key phrase there is systematically remove. What does that mean? Basically a mass computerized data system where, in this case, I believe people in Virginia can check a box as to whether or not they're a U.S. citizen for their driver's license application. Apparently, in this case, there were some individuals who checked the box mistakenly, thinking it was the donor organ box or something else. And so when you have a data like that says, hey, code all the people that checked the box that they were no as the U.S. citizen and purge those people, well, that would be a systematic removal in the system to get them out of the system and out of the voter rolls. But what the court did say, and what Virginia can still do, is to make an individualized investigation and an individualized determination that this person or that person is not actually a U.S. citizen because they have clear and convincing evidence that they can't actually vote. Obviously, you can also prosecute individuals for voting for voting illegally when they couldn't. So the other thing I would stress is it's not entirely clear that those 1,500 individuals are in fact non-citizens. That's actually a fact that was conceded in the court document. So as Brian Hauswirth always tells you, look at the court documents. and so there's that aspect of it. But then there's also, hey, look, we don't want massive, we don't want ineligible people to be voting, obviously, but we also don't want bureaucratic, database mistakes, potentially disenfranchising U.S. citizens like myself and others who do want to actually vote. And that's the problem sometimes with these things being done so close to the election. Again, election law is very complex. It's very tricky. And we have to make sure we absolutely get it right so that everybody's vote counts that can legally count.
Now, Glenn Youngkin did say that they have a provisional opportunity for people who claim that they should be on the rolls to cast a provisional ballot. So even these people could then cast a ballot and they could be then adjudicated afterwards. So, okay, well, it's complex, and we're glad Jesus is here to help us sort this out. And again, he appearing on the ballot against Stephanie Morel on next Tuesday. Hey, thanks for being with us, Jesus. Appreciate it.
Thank you, my friends. Take care.
All righty.
He brings up a very good point about the court documents, and I can't speak to the case you're referring to with the immigrants and stuff, but in criminal cases, and that's what I mainly cover, criminal cases, court documents, they're necessary because you really don't have police
0.61%, NASDAQ up at 0.56%. And the bond market right now is really driving a lot of these movements in the market, so keep your eye on that. As far as our sectors, we were watching utilities and financials down big, communication services up on Friday. And as we set to open the market here today, everything is pretty significantly over 0.5% up in the green. So could be a good day, at least as we get started. Also, another reason to celebrate. I know as Trump donned the apron and was waving out the drive-through window, people were speculating, hey, if this man can solve the ice cream machine problem, he'll for sure get elected as the president. But there's a court, actually, or I guess the Copyright Office is coming to our rescue with respect to the ice cream machine. Now, I think we had previously reported on this dispute, but the ice cream machine apparently involves quite a bit of technology. There's some sort of like digital key, and previously it had been there was a company that basically had a monopoly to fix these machines, that they were the only people. And so McDonald's companies, and they were really backed up, and this company is called Tobler. And so that's why they were taking forever to get fixed. And McDonald's are like, hey, can't we just like get a third party in here, come in, fix the machine? And they said no. So Taylor and this company called Kitsch were in a big dispute over this. They are, and so finally, the U.S. Copyright Office on Friday basically determined, we're going to allow these third parties to come in and fix items even when they have a digital key. But this doesn't just affect ice cream machines. Other products that might have these types of digital keys, or digital locks, I guess is what they're calling them. Companies that make ventilators, for example, have these digital locks that had some exclusivity surrounding them, that now this ruling might allow third parties to come in and fix these machines. So very good. We are still unsure what's going to happen to the website called McBroken, which is a website dedicated to documenting broken McFlurry machines. They might be in for a rough day, because it sounds like if we get these third parties in there, we should see more functioning ice cream machines.
Oh, yeah, that's like the running gag. The shake machine is not working today at McDonald's. It was like more often than not.
That's the same kind of problem that Desi has, right? It can't get the software to pay a daycare We are thankful that you're with us. Of course, there's only 8 days left. How many of you are going to get out there and vote early? Does it mean that we're just cannibalizing? That is, whether you're on the right or the left, whether you're vote Democrat or Republican, whether you're independent, are you just stealing votes, cannibalizing those election day votes? Or will it send a message to others who may be on the fence as to whether to vote at all because they're sort of disgusted with both candidates? We hear a lot about that on both sides. People that traditionally vote Republicans say, I just can't do Trump, sorry. And people that vote Democrat, it's like, no, I'm so angry that this bloodless coup, this nonviolent coup took place to oust Biden and put Kamala in. I'm not going to do there. But if they see numbers and momentum, will people that are of the social persuasion, which defines the human experience, we're social animals, will they follow suit and say, maybe I want to be with the winner? And it appears as though, whoever you look at, whatever numbers you're looking at, that may be happening. Or, hey, my side's not doing so well. I better get out there and vote. I mean, there's all kinds of psychology involved. And hopefully in the next couple days, we'll be talking, John, to the county clerk there in Cole County and see what kind of things he's seeing as the election season rolls on.
When we checked in with Steve Korsmeyer late last week, the Cole County clerk, he told us over 3,300 people had voted in person at the courthouse. Over 760 had mailed in ballots, and said they were seeing 650 to 700 voters a day at his office in the Cole County Courthouse.
And Scott said he had to, didn't I hear him say he had to vote on a trash can?
There you go.
I wonder how the privacy rules work out there. I don't know.
There's something wonderful and appropriate with that, though.
Isn't there something really metaphorical about that?
I think so.
Yeah, voting for the political class on a trash can. With all due respect to our politician friends out there, I'm just saying.
Does put it in perspective a little bit, doesn't it?
So Helene sent me this interesting story about guys that are so-called manly men, not the Tim Walz and Doug Emhoff variety, not the beta male type, but type that are like, John, you and me and Faughn and Hanson and Nolan, manly man.
That's a scary tribe to be associated with from the get-go.
Brother.
Does masculinity shorten lifespan? Researchers at the University of Chicago say that this pattern begins as early as adolescence, continues into adulthood, potentially putting these men at greater risk. This is on a JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association open platform. They looked at 4,000 American men from their teenage years through early adulthood, looking at how their degree of, quote, of their MGE, not MSG like Madison Square Garden or monosodium glutamate. Huh?
Or BDE.
Typical male behavior. This is called male gender expressivity. How closely they conform to typical male behavior patterns and how that affected their likelihood of being diagnosed with and treated for conditions for high blood pressure and diabetes. Well, look, here's the bottom line. It turns out that these men did not get the diagnoses as timely as others. Among men with elevated blood pressure, those with higher MGE scores were 4% less likely to receive a hypertension diagnosis. And higher adolescent MGE scores, those guys were 15% likely to receive a diagnosis of diabetes when their blood sugar levels indicated they had one. Now, of course, our own Brian Hauswirth here, you've said that you're diabetes, but you're a manly man, right? Okay.
Well, I try, but yeah, you don't.
Do my Tim Allen impersonation there. But here's the most troubling thing, and I see this. And guys, if you value anything I ever say on this airwave, if you listen to this program, take this to heart, pun intended.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Most troubling, even when these guys that had high levels of male gender expressivity, Clint Eastwood, make my day. They were less likely to follow through with treatment. Among men who had already received a high blood pressure diagnosis, those who displayed more masculine behaviors in adolescence were 11% less likely to take prescribed medicines, 10% less likely to take diabetes meds. And of course, if you don't treat these things, it's going to have consequences for you. So do follow through. And they hypothesize this may be that guys don't want to that they interpret this as a sign of weakness. And traditional male gender expressivity is, I'm tough, I'm invincible, I'm a gladiator, nothing gonna get me.
That's also called being hard-headed.
Well, that's true.
Or a chicken.
That is certainly hard-headed is right with some, but no, I encourage. It's not just men, but sometimes women don't want to take the medicine as well. But for anyone listening, trust me when I tell you, folks, you do not want that disease. It is horrible. Thankfully for me, I'm doing better, but it is just. But you got to take the medicine. I mean, there's basically one of two ways. You can exercise, but it's hard to do all the time when you have to work. So if you can't do that all the time, you either take the medicine, which a lot of those medicines cause terrible side effects. I'm talking nausea. They can, depending on what it is.
They don't always, but they can.
Some of those shots especially. And then the other alternative is the injections at the doctor's office, and those can also have some side effects, not as much though. But again, you got to definitely take it. It's not a sign of weakness. It's not. You do not want to have a stroke. You don't want to have that, and you definitely don't want to have a heart attack.
Well, look on the political scene. I don't know. There are some current things that would countermand that. I mean, look at Donald Trump. I think most people would probably agree. He's high on the level of male gender expressivity, sometimes to a fault, right? Mm-hmm. Guy's pretty strong. What is he, 89 years? How old is he?
He's about 80, I think.
80?
I mean,
80,
he's out
80,
campaigning
70,
every day. I mean,
going strong, right? And
been shot.
Yeah, so this is very interesting.
Got his own golf course.
Guys tend to not. Well, he stays active on the golf course, but his diet isn't anything to write home about him. He's a big McDonald's fan.
He does. He does.
So a lot of this has to do with the way you pick your parents too. But I mean, you can certainly have whatever hand of genetic cards you're dealt, right? As far as your risk for diabetes or hypertension or cancer or anything, you can play it a little better. By adopting the RFK Jr. lifestyle, which is whole foods. A shout out, kudos to producer Hannah. I found a beef stick. I saw a beef stick that she had called Chomps.
Wow.
It's grass finished and fed, all grass fed beef, whole food. No funny buzzy stuff in there.
Literally the only grass-fed thing I've ever halfway enjoyed.
Helene got some grass-finished milk the other day, and I said, "Is this whole milk?" She said, "No, it's 2%. It's marvelous stuff, grass-fed." In Switzerland they eat all the cheese and everything that we're told is bad for us. You know why it's not as bad? You are what you eat eats. You are what you eat eats. So if the animals eat wholesome pasture, all that, you're always going to be good.
And what Hannah brings up a good point, and that's certainly healthy, and proud of Hannah as well with that. Speaking of the chomps in the meat, I've got it up on both websites, KWOS.com, 939theeagle.com. The governor was in Mexico. They have had
beef sticks.
Well, they've had just so many disappointments over the years, closings, plant closings. They had their hospital closed, but they've had two big stories in back-to-back weeks. The multi-million-dollar hospital they're planning. We had Brady Dubois on the show, and we don't know all the details yet, but potentially he's $50 million hospital. And then Chomps, it's Chomps Meat Sticks. Western Smokehouse Partners is building they broke the ground last week. 250 jobs are going to pay about $22 an hour. Those are good-paying jobs. That's a huge. And then they got $60 million to build the plant. All the construction workers, the men and women, they're going to build that.
I know that Western family. Their original location is up there in Greentop.
That's right.
And I was, we living in
Adair County,
and up there in Scotland County, next door.
County, yeah.
Well, no, they were in Adair County, but I was in Scotland County. No, they were in Schuyler County, I think. Actually, I don't know. It's either Adair or
it's
Schuyler.
Right on a county edge. But I've got a picture of the plant.
Big family business. Sam Western and his team, great people. And, and they were all very philanthropically oriented as well. They're very, very good for the community.
They're great.
Glad to see that they're coming to Mexico. Now,
huge.
This is, I'm not going to play this now, but when we come back, we're going to take a little break. We're going to take it early because we do have some leftovers, lots of leftovers to talk about. Trump on Rogan, the Madison Square Garden event, and what Dr. Phil said, had some interesting things to say last night at Madison
No one respects her. No one trusts her. No one takes her seriously. Everyone knows she is a very low IQ individual.
Well, that was Donald J. Trump at a huge rally at Madison Square Garden last evening with
He wasn't talking about me, was he?
No. 180 degrees opposite of you is Kamala Harris. And she seems to be losing steam. She was heckled at an appearance in a black church gathering the other day, and all she could do was clap and say, well, that's why we have a democracy. And then she went on and had a lot of platitudinous stuff at one point saying that, God wants us to do this for him. It's very, very interesting. Vote for Kamala and you'll be doing God's bidding. Very interesting. But a lot of people have said that Donald Trump's life was spared in July because of some divine purpose. And, you can argue that there may be something there. God has raised up leaders in the past that are flawed, but have gone on to do great things. Look at Joseph and his Technicolor. Wonder if it was a rainbow-colored dream coat. I don't know. Just got me to thinking about that. John, you got a leftover?
Well, yeah, we had a bunch of Jefferson Cityans gathered in Community Park on Friday to remember little Darnell Gray. He was the little toddler who'd been beaten and smothered, allegedly, by his caretaker, and she is yet to go on trial. And this was the 6th anniversry of the little boy's death.
It's been that long already. Wow.
Yeah.
Holy cow. I don't know. It's hard to process those things. We had that incident in the Columbia area where some crazed person burned a Mizzou student's body, in the pit. And the demonic influences on the human condition are amazing. What'll happen? Dr. Phil was one who was stumping on the podium last night for Donald Trump, and he got to talking about bullying. He says, I know a little bit about bullying, and, the Democrats, when they're bullying people by canceling them if they say they voted for Trump or denigrating them, or, I don't denigrate people that vote for Kamala Harris. I've not said one evil word about them. I've scratched my head and say, if you look at, her performance and just her inability to speak on the, spontaneously and her policy positions, but I don't denigrate them. I don't think any of us do. But we know what it's like to be denigrated. A lot of people are closet Trump supporters. And so we talked about bullying a little bit, and then people claim Donald Trump bullies. Here's what Dr. Phil said.
Now, let me tell you what the critics are going to say when they hear me talking about this. They're going to say, well, now, wait a minute. Come on. Isn't Trump a bully? And let me tell you why the answer to that question is no. Because to be a bully, there has to be an imbalance of power. And when there's not, it's just called a debate. And he's just better at it than anybody else.
And I think there's a certain amount of truth to that. I mean, a bully is when a bigger, tougher kid takes it out on a scrawny little guy. And you know what I mean? That's bullying. Although I think it's been redefined and been softened in modern times.
So like Trump and Biden maybe in the debate.
I know. And I have to say, I continue to be tickled. I can't think of any other word but tickled by Elon Musk's youthful exuberance. I mean, I think there's something refreshing about it. I played it last week when he was up there saying, I don't want to be in politics. I just want to build rockets and make cars. It's just, there's something nice about that. Here he was last night in Madison Square Garden.
To get the government off your back and out of your pocketbook. And America's just not just going to be great. America is going to reach heights that it has never seen before. The future is going to be amazing.
It's just on the other hand, let's talk about fascism. Isn't fascism really defined as a small group of people in power preventing any opposition and invoking one-party rule, right? Under the name of nationalism. That's pretty much what Hitler did, right? Destroy all your enemies, exhort that power from a small cabal of people. Well, if you look at what the Democrats have done, first of all, censoring our free speech on the town square, which is the modern-day social media. Okay, check the box there. So if anyone opposes their thinking or their saying, okay, we cancel you. Okay, that's fascist. They want to pack the courts with whatever it takes to get their rules across the line. Oh, and how about that filibuster? They want to do away with the filibuster. That takes away any opposition defense for any opposition opportunity with the minority for any practical purposes. And how about let's pack the Senate, if you will, with Democrat senators by ushering in the Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rican statehood. That'd be 4 automatic Dems. You're looking at uniparty. That's one-party rule. And, Tim Walz told AOC the other day and said it out loud.
The Senate has their own things. They have kind of their norms and their customs. But in order...
Maybe some of those norms. I'm just going to say, I don't know where you stand, but I'm guessing you and I are probably the same on the filibuster. But
yeah, we got to get rid of that thing.
I mean, there you go. He said it. Get rid of the filibuster. And, I mean, you're talking about... They'll have their way with this country and this republic and this two-party system, or more if you're Gary Nolan. I mean, I don't care. I think that's great. But anything but a one-party system, right?
Well, they talk about fascism, and you can even make the argument that the left is fascist. They're the ones who talk about the forced suppression of the opposition.
That's
if
what
that's
I'm
not
saying.
Fascism,
I don't know what is. Yeah. Well, and I won't play it now, but Chris Cuomo, well, I'll play a little bit of it.
You got to stop thinking that the people who support Trump are like Trump, that they speak like Trump, that they act like Trump. They don't. They want to hire Trump to do a dirty job. They want him to be a virus to the political corpus. They want him to disrupt, to destroy, to demean those that they disrespect and dislike, the system that they distrust and despise. They want someone to do what they believe has been done to them and that they cannot do themselves.
Well, there you go. None other than Chris Cuomo. Chris Cuomo defending those who defend Trump.